Hello, ladies, gentlemen, and people of all ages, and welcome to the World Builders Cast. This is going to be the first episode of all of this, including my YouTube channel, and being Chapter 1, this is going to be about the beginning of the writing process. But before we begin, I should say that this is literally my first bit of content, so it's not going to be the best. It's only going to be on YouTube for now, despite being in podcast format. I'm going to look at expanding the options later, so please bear with me. The biggest part of writing a book is planning it. This can either take up the most amount of time or no time at all. It really depends on the writing style that you choose to follow. Those writing styles, of which there are two that I'm going to talk about, being pantsers and planners. The first that we're going to talk about are pantsers, who are people who just try to go with the flow. Pantsers don't really plan things out. I do that sometimes myself, but they do have a rough idea and write based off of that. Like, you can have the ending in mind, anything. There are many perks to this style, especially if you are a very motivated person. With this style, you can fly by previous expectations that you set for yourself and move on to the things that are genuinely exciting. However, the downsides to this are the fact that if you aren't an experienced writer, you will likely have to rewrite many parts of your story. This is just unavoidable if you don't know what you're doing, which that has something to do for all of us, I suppose. In my personal experience, when I did this, I had to rewrite roughly 18 chapters. So if you do choose to use this style, keep that in mind, because those plot holes that are created are very, very difficult to patch up. The next style is the plotter. Plotters are planners to the utmost extent. This style involves a lot of planning, as by the name, and most people won't use this style, won't move on unless they have the entirety of their work planned out. The advantages are that you do know everything that's going to happen, and if you need to know what to write next, you can just look at your plan. It's a very good detailed map, but sometimes the smaller details are not in your plan, and sometimes people don't know what to do with that. But then again, I know people that will just plan the heck out of everything, and they'll have the small details too, so it really depends on how in-depth you want to make your plan. If you don't go far, as I said, you're not going to do much. Or you can just dive into the deep end and plan every small detail out and railroad yourself through the whole story. The disadvantages of this, of course, are the slower writing process, all the time that it takes to plan, and you have to make sure that you don't make your story railroady. In my experience of many authors that go to my school, you should mix the styles. Personally, I find the plot, and then I start writing. Usually by doing an outline, which I shall go over in some other time. I don't have a name for my writing style. I'll come up with it later. But it would make sense for my style to start out as a middle ground between pantsing and planning. But I digress. Moving on, the writing process is the favorite part of the process for some people, just like how planning can be the favorite part of the process for some others, but that's besides the point. The process of writing is the part of where the story actually comes into play. Characters live their lives, the world can be as vibrant and lively as you want it to be, or vice versa. It's all up to the writer to decide how the world wants to be. That's the beauty of writing a book. The world is entirely your own, and you control the plot. So, I am no English teacher, so I won't get into the details of good or bad grammar while writing. That usually improves as you start writing. I do have some recommendations, though. That should help you get started or move through the writing process. Firstly, I'll bring up the fact that you need inspiration to write. Trying to write without inspiration is incredibly difficult. This can come from your planning if you're self-motivated enough, but that's really only for the planner route. Pantsers, or someone in between the two, often have to find inspiration from different sources. This can mean multiple things. Either it means reading more or watching shows that you like. I have done that multiple times. Watching shows and reading books is a great way to do it. Watching shows will give inspiration, but it won't help evolving your grammar. I've done this, and it really does not help. I've seen other people do it, and sometimes it actually degrades the grammar. I digress again. Personally, I have gotten much more inspiration from shows than books, but that is really the only thing I've gotten inspiration. And if I'll have a list of these shows, which is like Avatar, The Last Airbender, The Dragon Prince, Sword Art Online, despite it not being very popular among some people, Monster Hunter, Legends of the Guild, Dota 2, Dragon's Blood, etc. I'll put a list of that somewhere. There are also books I have taken inspiration from, being like Percy Jackson, Fablehaven, Michael Vey, Beyonders, Dragon Watch, and more. If you don't have inspiration, either from another source or from yourself, it's going to be hard to write a story. So try reading books, television shows, comics, manga, even just going out in the world. Just try to find your inspiration from somewhere, and it will help a lot with the writing process. We are now on to my favorite part of doing any story-related thing, and that is the getting started. Well, when you're starting on writing, one of the hardest things about the writing process is getting started, is knowing where to start. And that's kind of odd to say, because a lot of people would say you should start from the beginning, but I know some people that start from the end, or some that start from the middle. I've only had one person that has ever done that. Personally, don't recommend it. Some people say that they should start from chapter 1 or the epilogue, because that will be the foundation upon which your story is built. Others say to start writing from the very last chapter or the prologue, which will give you a guideline to follow. Both have their perks and interesting factors. Personally, I enjoy writing from the very beginning, after I have all the lore and all story plot hooks figured out, of course. Writing from the beginning is great for people who don't have a full outline set up. So, like, for my middle line between Planner and Pantser, it works really well. It keeps you from railroading your story, and sometimes that keeps the story from being predictable. It can also keep the story more interesting for you to write yourself, because why would you write if it's not fun for yourself? And if you don't know what's truly going to happen next, then you can also enjoy the process much more, from personal experience myself. On the other hand, starting at the end of the story can keep you focused on the objectives. It also keeps the plot holes from opening up more, and if you're worried about plot holes, you might prefer to start writing from the end of the story. So, as I mentioned from the past, you might want to mix the two sometimes. I have had stories where I write chapter 1, and then write the final chapter, and then I keep going there. That way I have both the groundwork and the railroad, or not railroad, that's bad, and I have the final destination set. These two ways, starting from the beginning and going to the end, you should try both of them to see what you like, but they both are good, and there's not a wrong way to do it. Your preference is key to choosing which one you want to do. Okay, when you finish writing your book, it's generally a good idea to check things over and make sure there aren't mistakes, like plot holes, grammar errors, generally how a character acts. Plot holes often present themselves when you don't know your story entirely, or you just forgot some part of your own lore. That's happened to me on multiple occasions. It's also a good chance when you're reading it over to further familiarize yourself with the characters. Let yourself know how the characters act, what they should be doing, what their habits are. It's important because then you can recognize that you accidentally wrote your character doing something that doesn't really fit them. So that can be whether they act in their dialogue, anything. It can also help you further realize the landscape that you put them in, if the mood isn't dreary or happy enough. Anything. It's about the emotion of your book. You need to make sure you get your themes down here when you read it over, because it allows you to have a chance to edit everything. You can do this while you are writing the book. I prefer reading it over while I have written chapters, so I just read previous chapters. And then there's some other people who read it over once they're fully done writing the entire book. Either way, it's a really good choice to read over your book again, so you don't end up making many mistakes. On top of reading it over yourself, you should have someone else read the book. They will have insights that you don't have when reading your own production. From my personal experience, friends have told me aspects of my book that don't make any sense. they can do the same for you, and you should get your friends to read your book. I mean, are you just going to keep it for yourself anyways? Um, Anyways, outside perspectives are very important. You are your worst critic, for the most part at least. Outside sources can tell you how good or bad your production is. That's the hardest thing to manage, though, is criticism. But criticism is a topic for another day, perhaps the next episode. This is the end of The Writer's Journey Chapter 1. Getting into writing is very fun, and is a recommended pastime activity by me. It has helped me improve my language and writing skills a lot. I mean, it's why I have a college level of reading and writing since 11th grade. Overall, it has also helped me to plan and organize things more efficiently. Just don't look at my room, it's not very nice right now. Planning, writing, and concluding your story is very important. Knowing how your strategies fit into them is also very important, and it will make your story more fun, whether if it's for you or others. Anyway, the next time that we're on this podcast should be about criticism, so I did have it planned. Well, at least you guys know now. So, next time it's about criticism, learning how to receive and use it. Thank you for listening to this episode of the World Builders Cast. If you want more people to receive this content, please give it a like and share it with a friend. If you want to hear more about writing and world building, please subscribe. Lastly, if you want to support my work, there are links to both my Patreon and Royal Road account in the description. That's all I have for now. Remember to have a good day. Goodbye.